Hello creative friends, welcome to this video where I'm going to show you how I made this big notepad. It is very cute, I'm very proud of it, I'm thrilled with how it turned out. It's 30 pages on hard backing, glued at the top. If you haven't seen any of my other notepad videos, I make lots of notepads and I've done lots of tutorials on them, but I thought I was going to start a new series where I just kind of make some new designs and walk you through the process as I make them. I thought that might be interesting to see how I draw them. So this video is a little less about the glue method, although you do see my process and I'll show you the materials I use, and more about the drawing process and the illustration process for the design. The process that I'm doing, that we're going to be going through, is step 1, we go to Canva, design the actual lined part of the graphic. Step 2 is I import the Canva design into Procreate on my iPad and do the illustration around it. Step 3, I print that out. Step 4, cut the printed papers to be the right size. Step 5 is do the backing. Step 6, glue binding. It sounds like a lot of steps, but this isn't a super long video. We're gonna get it done really quick. I'm gonna narrate the whole thing and tell you what I'm doing and why, and we'll just chit chat and hang out, and hopefully you enjoy seeing my process. I am making these notepads because I am prototyping them to see if I like using them and like the design, and then hopefully in the spring maybe I'm going to do a big stationery launch in my online store, but I'm hand making the prototypes to try them out. So that is what you're going to be watching with me. I hope you enjoy it. I have a couple others in the works as well, so I'll try and roll out those videos every couple of weeks maybe. I don't know, we'll figure it out. And I'll show you a close-up of this at the end so you can see the close-up project. For now, you get it from a distance. Hope it looks enticing. Yeah, happy you're here. Let's make a notepad together. Starting off in Canva, I create a custom canvas that is the size of the notepad I want to make in inches. And it's going to be 8 inches wide and 10 inches tall. Once I get that figured out here, I open up a new canvas, and this is basically the dimensions of the notepad. So whatever you design in here is going to be your notepad design. And I like to just do the basics of like the lines and the boxes in Canva, and then I export this and open it in Procreate and I illustrate over top of it. That's just my preference. You can also just use Canva graphics and add it here. Do whatever you like. But I'm using boxes, I'm rounding the corners, and for this design I had this idea of doing like 4 boxes and 2 of them have lines and 2 are blank. So that's just what I'm creating. I'm just making this little grid out of white boxes, which are in the shape menu, or you can just tap R for rectangle on your keyboard and it opens up or it adds a little box. So once I've got the grid done, then I add the lines, and you add a line in Canva by tapping on L on the keyboard for line. Oh, that was really good timing for this voiceover. And then you can reposition the line. I duplicated a bunch of times to kind of make the lines for the writing section. And then I highlight all of them so that I can change the color and adjust the size. I like to make them a light gray color just because I don't want them to be like too bold. You could also make them match the background if you wanted, but that's basically the graphic. So I'm just renaming it and exporting it as a PNG. And to put it on my iPad, I just put it in Google Drive and open it up on my iPad, but there's lots of ways to move files between iPad and computer. I'm sure you know how to do that, but yeah, then I open it up in Procreate. So let's look at Procreate next. I'm using kind of a different method for designing this notepad, so I'm going to show you it step by step here. I've basically drawn out all these elements on paper that I want to include. This is like a seaweed theme notepad. So I drew it out, and I'm just using the camera on my iPad to take a picture of it. It does not have to be good quality because I'm going to trace it in Procreate. And normally I will just start drawing in Procreate, but lately I've just been enjoying doing some paper sketching to get some shapes going, and that's kind of been my starting point. So that's how I'm doing this, and just showing you the process. I just take the photo and then open up Procreate, and actually I realized afterwards I could just take the photo right from the menu in Procreate, but I didn't do that. So I'll import it from my iPad. You probably don't need to see the steps for that. I'm just importing the photos. So I took 2 photos because it was kind of a wide image. Now they're in my layers, and I'm in a clean layer, a fresh layer. I'm going to trace it. I am using the 6B pencil in the sketching tab. 6B pencil and soft pastel are my 2 go-to brushes, which I'm going to use for this entire project. So you'll see I'm just tracing it in a new layer. I'm repeating that because that's the super important part. once I have that done, I can rearrange all the pieces. And I want this to be kind of in the new art style I've been doing, which is using those two brushes, which sort of makes like, I don't know, a more painterly, not painterly, but like sketchy, imperfect kind of illustration. That's been my vibe lately, but I feel like it looks a little bit cleaner once you add the shading, which is the last step I'm going to do here. And obviously I didn't draw, well, maybe not obviously, I didn't draw enough seaweed to cover the entire frame of the notepad, but I'm going to fill it in using just my imagination based on these shapes that I already made. There are some bubbles in here, different seaweeds and a starfish as well. I think it's really cute. Like, I live in Nova Scotia in Canada, so I see the ocean all the time, spend a lot of time on the beach. And so seaweed is just like a very, I don't know, present thing in my life. That's kind of a weird thing to say. So what I'm doing here is I've removed the photo, I've turned on all the layers, and I'm putting all of the layers for all the different sketches into a group. And then I'm going to duplicate it and then turn off one of those groups. What I basically did was make a backup layer, so if I mess up or put something on the edge of the design and crop it out, I can go back to that safety layer and copy it again. I hope that makes sense. It's not necessary, but I'm just paranoid that I'm going to mess up. So I've rearranged all those illustrations around the frame. I'm just going to flatten that layer, and this is just going to continue to be my sketch layer, where I will go and fill in all those gaps with drawings inspired by the ones from my paper sketch. That's basically the first step of this, is to do the sketch layer. And I do all the sketches in different colors because just my illustration style is to have borders on my drawings, but they are borders that match the inner color rather than outlining everything in black, for example. So yeah, I am using different colors here. And I created a custom palette for this piece, which was inspired by seaweed colors, which is what I'm pulling from. But yeah, I like to make a custom palette for most of my illustration collections. Like I'll create several pieces that are all in the same palette because I think that is just good strategy to make everything look cohesive. And I put a lot of sped up footage of me drawing in this video because it was really lengthy. And actually, I'm just going to do the sketch on camera, and then I'm going to show you just the Procreate video that you can export of the coloring, because the coloring takes so long for me, maybe like 2 hours, and I'm not going to sit here at my drawing desk and do it. I sat on the couch. So this is the finished sketch, and here is the Procreate drawing, fast time of me coloring it in. And I'm using like I said, the soft pastel brush to color in on a separate layer underneath. And I used that same brush for shading. And I just used the 6B pencil to reinforce the details on the outline layer. And then that's it. I upped the saturation in the exported version on my computer because my printer prints better when you increase the saturation to almost a silly amount. It just looks more vibrant. This is my printer. I print my Notepad stuff at home. Epson 2400. I don't know, they've moved on to other numbers. This is a bit of an older one. I would just say any Epson EcoTank printer is my preference. I think it's great on ink. And here's just showing you the two versions, saturated and not. The one on the right is the saturated version, and the one on the left is just printed as is. So you can see it's just a little bit better when you up the saturation. Yeah. Now we'll move on to making the notepad. First step is to cut out all the pieces. I have a guillotine cutter now. I used to do it just with an X-Acto knife. So this is faster technically, but I am very slow because, I don't know, I like doing one page at a time. This is a 30-page notepad, and that's not really the most efficient way, but I just like doing them all individually. I'm not gonna make you watch me cut every single page, but this is just the first one, and they look so nice when they're trimmed. Like, look at that. I think that's beautiful. I'm very excited for this notepad also. The finished product was really nice. So this is the last sheet. So you can see I've chopped all of them. I like this cutter because it has a laser in it. I can't find it linked anywhere. I bought it on clearance, but it is by X-Acto brand. So I'll link a similar one in the video description. Here's all my finished pages. and make sure they're in the right orientation as well. So that's all good. And now we can move on to working on the backing board. So I like my notepads to be on something stiff so they don't flop around. I'm actually making this one as a gift, and it's sort of also a prototype, so I'm not using the normal backing card that I use. This is the back of a painting, like a watercolor paper thing. What am I trying to say? When you buy the paper comes with a hardback. I'm just using this because I have it on hand and it's extra durable, but normally I just use chipboard, which I buy in really big sheets. I've explained all of this in other tutorial videos, so if you want a more thorough debrief, you can watch more, but I just use anything off my scrap pile for the personal projects. So I'm just cutting this out, and I also cut out a ton of time of me fighting with this with the X-Acto knife. It was brutal to cut through because it was way too thick. It's like 1/2 centimeter thick. But anyways, like I said, I'm making this as a gift because I'm going to actually give it to my mom for Christmas because she likes to have stationery as a present. And I always make her custom ones every Christmas. But also I'm doing this as a prototype because I would like to have a big stationery launch maybe in the spring. But I'm not thinking that I want to make them by hand for that because it's simply too time consuming for me. And if you watched my how to price notepads video, I did that pretty recently, like how to price your art products and stationery. You'll see that the margins on these ones made by hand are pretty thin because the materials are quite expensive and also it's time consuming. So I think I'm gonna commit to getting some notepads manufactured, but that means that first I'm going to make these handmade prototypes. So I finished cutting out the backing and I'm just stacking them together, and this step is a lot of like tapping and shuffling to make sure they're super level. And then I use clips to hold it together. I'm using 2 big like bookbinding clamps here, but I also have in this little bin like bulldog clips or like things for paper. You can use anything really. And I also like to use the little scraps from cutoffs to protect the pages from the clamps. So that's what that extra little board there is for. And I'll just clamp the edges together and then it's time to glue it. And I don't know, I think this is a very satisfying process. Why did I include so much footage of clamping? Anyways, that's what it looks like. Here's the glue that I use. I use Mod Podge water-based satin finish. It is my favorite one to use for notepad making. I use it in all my notepad videos. I think it works really well. And again, I'll link the exact one I use down below. But you can use other glues successfully, I've heard. This is just my preference. And to put it on, I just use a little paintbrush. The key to doing this is to take your time, do several thin layers, and then wait between the layers for them to dry. It doesn't take very long, and if you're doing a big batch of notepads at once, you can kind of just rotate through them, and by the time you're done the first one, or done the last one, the first one is dry. This is bad footage, so I filmed it after it was painted with the glue. That's kind of what it looks like as it's drying. It's a little bit lumpy, but that's completely fine. I think it just, a thicker layer of glue there helps reinforce it. And then when it's dry, the notepad is done. And that's the whole project. I love it. And here's the finished project, all glued and delightfully bound. And I think it turned out really great. So this is a prototype, like I said. I'm happy with how the pages lined up and the glue held up. I hope you liked watching this video, and you can see the very tidy corners. When my corners are tidy, I'm happy. Hope you liked watching this. If you did enjoy it, let me know, because I do want to make more like, here's how I DIY things, but in kind of a different way, less tutorial-y and more just here's my process-y. Does that make sense? Anyways, thanks for watching. I really appreciate you. Hope you make something cool. Subscribe if you want to hang out with me more. I'd really like that. And you have a really great day, wherever you are.